Forget modern sleeping bags for a moment. Forget synthetic insulation, space-age fabrics and marketing claims. During World War II, soldiers survived brutal winters with limited gear, constant movement and no guarantee of warmth. Yet many endured nights that really should have killed them. They didn't do it by piling on blankets. Instead, they used a field-tested method that focused on heat management, moisture control and body positioning rather than comfort. This wasn't just theory. It was learned the hard way, in forests, foxholes, ruined buildings and open fields from the Eastern Front to the Ardennes. If you're interested in real historical survival knowledge that still works today, this one method alone can genuinely change how you think about sleeping in the cold. Why did World War II soldiers not rely on sleeping bags alone? Modern survival culture treats sleeping bags as the ultimate solution, but those soldiers quickly learned their limits. Early war sleeping bags were heavy, slow to dry, and honestly useless once wet. Soldiers operating on foot often just abandoned them altogether. German, Soviet, British and American troops all reported the same problem. Cold didn't just come from the air, it came from the ground, from sweat trapped in clothing, and from poor heat retention at rest. Soldiers who slept normally often woke up colder than when they lay down. The trick that actually worked addressed all three problems at once. The core trick was heat conservation through layered entrapment, not insulation. The method relied on creating a tight-sealed microclimate around the body using clothing, shelter material and body positioning rather than loose insulation. Soldiers would wear dry inner layers, often reversing garments so the driest fabric sat closest to the skin. Outer layers were pulled tight, not loose, to prevent heat from escaping. The key detail many miss is that the body was wrapped and sealed, almost like a cocoon, minimizing air movement entirely. Heat loss slows dramatically when warm air simply cannot circulate away from the body. Ground insulation mattered more than air temperature. World War II manuals and veteran accounts repeatedly emphasized that the ground kills heat faster than cold air. Soldiers were taught to never sleep directly on soil, snow or stone. Even a thin barrier made a real difference. Helmets, packs, pine branches, straw, spare clothing or folded shelter halves were placed underneath the torso. This raised the body just slightly and broke direct thermal contact with the ground. A soldier sleeping at -10 degrees with ground insulation often fared better than one at freezing temperatures without it. Moisture control was honestly the difference between life and frostbite. One of the most counterintuitive lessons, was actually removing damp clothing before sleep. Many soldiers froze because they kept sweaty garments on, thinking that more layers meant more warmth. But in reality, moisture just drains heat rapidly. The trick really involved changing into the driest available clothing, even if that meant you had to feel cold for a bit. Wet socks were often hung inside clothing near the torso to dry using body heat overnight. This practice was common among German mountain troops and Soviet infantry alike. Dryness, not thickness, kept men alive. Body positioning locked heat where it mattered most. Soldiers were trained to sleep, curled up, knees drawn toward the chest, elbows tucked in, chin down. This reduced exposed surface area and, protected vital organs. In group situations, soldiers slept back to back or side by side, sharing body heat. Accounts from the Eastern Front describe entire squads surviving sub-zero nights by sleeping pressed together under a shared shelter half, rotating positions as needed. This wasn't comfort. It was calculated heat retention. Shelter halves and improvised wraps, they replaced sleeping bags entirely. The shelter half, which was just a simple triangular canvas sheet, actually became one of the most versatile tools of the war. Soldiers would wrap themselves tightly in it, sometimes even doubling up with another man's shelter for extra warmth. The canvas blocked wind completely and, quite remarkably, trapped warm air inside. Unlike sleeping bags, it could be adjusted as conditions changed. Soldiers could vent heat, dry their clothing, or fully seal themselves in, depending on the weather. This kind of flexibility really made it superior in active combat zones. Now, how can this WWII trick be applied today in real situations? Well, modern preppers and historians can use this method with just minimal gear. A tarp, poncho, or even a wool blanket can easily replace a shelter half. Dry base layers matter far more than expensive insulation, honestly. Always prioritize ground insulation first. Use branches, foam pads, backpacks, or even folded clothing. Wrap tightly, eliminate any airflow, and position your body to conserve heat. Even in a modern emergency vehicle kit, this approach tends to outperform relying on a single, bulky sleeping bag. Why does this knowledge still matter for serious survivalists and historians? Well, this method really represents something that modern survival advice often misses: adaptability under pressure. We soldiers didn't survive because they had better gear. They survived because they understood how the human body loses heat and how to slow that process with whatever they had on hand. This trick worked in forests, ruins, trenches and open fields, and honestly, it still works now. It's not romantic, and it's certainly not comfortable, but it is proven. If this kind of grounded, historically accurate survival knowledge matters to you, make sure you subscribe to The Prepper Historian. Share this with someone who thinks modern gear replaces hard-earned lessons. History, still has a lot to teach those willing to listen, and this channel exists to keep that knowledge alive.